Is this big enough for everyone's screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks good.
Can you make it just a little bit bigger?
Sure can. Is that
Good.
better?
That is excellent.
Great, great.
Okay, are we ready to go? Are we expecting Kim?
Yeah, I am expecting Kim.
Okay,
Let me just text her, see if she's coming in.
okay.
Just so you guys know, a city council meeting tomorrow night, they actually published the Zoom meeting information on the calendar. In case there's an issue streaming to YouTube again.
Okay.
So, that's pretty.
Risky.
It's an interesting security choice. I thought that was the whole reason that it was being streamed, but I guess it will be what it will be. I appreciate that they want to let everybody watch.
They have faith.
So Rachel, if it's okay while we're waiting on seeing if Kim is going to jump in or not, looks like there was a calendar snafu. I'm happy to, because I heard Kate's questions about number 3, special considerations and review. I know you had talked about that a little bit, but I'm also happy to review some of those things with everyone as well, if you'd like.
Please.
Okay, so for policies for consideration, the taping and recording of BOE meetings, we had talked about it our last meeting, and I think we tabled that until today. I was going to at first, I was going to come back and perhaps review a new kind of slate of policies for the committee. But at first, I had seen a request to review this policy, emergencies and disaster preparedness, pandemic, epidemic, emergencies, temporary powers granted to the superintendent. And then there was another request to add bylaws, 4.8 public participation. And then I had, in my conversation when we prepped as building out the agenda, I had asked Rachel if she also had an interest, and perhaps the board would have an interest in revisiting the previous policies that we had approved for COVID emergencies as well. Rachel, I didn't put the mask policies in here, but I could add that one as well if we'd like. So the wondering was, and I think Rachel had alluded to this earlier, these policies sunset at the end of the year or until repealed by the board. I think there's language in there kind of for both. I just want to ask the board to consider extending some until further notice, and I'd like an opportunity to kind of talk you through the rationale behind that request. So just to give you some background on number 3. If you'd like, I know, I believe with the first policy and the number 3, this committee would probably like some feedback from Kim, and then also some feedback on the taping and recording of BOE meetings. So if it's okay with the committee, I'd be happy to start with visits to schools and student, staff, and community health and safety. The last one, again, I'm not sure. I know one of the board members had requested a review of it, but I'm not positive of the rationale behind it, but certainly happy to open it up for discussion. So if I can, I'll start with visits to schools. And I'll make this one bigger. And so this policy, I think everyone is familiar with. It's essentially temporary restrictions on non-essential visitors to school facilities. I think as a district, we've learned enough, and I think we can begin to invite, expand on the term non-essential visitors. And so, one of the conversations Rachel and I had as part of the development of the agenda was, the groups who come in to take pictures. The conversation that I had with Kathy O'Dowd, people who we didn't have eye screening people come in last year. because just kind of given where we were with the pandemic, we didn't invite them in. But now that those volunteers have been vaccinated, this is another group who we certainly would make sense to invite in to do our eye screening and have those people part of and call them essential visitors to our buildings. I do think, at least it opens up the door for a conversation about volunteers coming into the schools. Certainly opens the doors, open those doors about conversations about perhaps people coming in to push in. So, sometimes like we have grants, and I know we had people come in to teach golf at our elementary schools and open up those doors. And so those doors were closed to those grant-like programs this year. But we can revisit, those invitations that we had and commitments we had in previous years, and just kind of relax. We can define as a board and as a district who those essential visitors are to school facilities. I don't know at this time, particularly as soon as September, it's a good idea to open the doors for parents to come back in buildings as soon as September, particularly given in September, our elementary students will still not have been vaccinated at that point. And until we get some more guidance from the CDC and the state health department, I'm going to recommend, and I certainly had a conversation with Kathy as well, recommend that perhaps we come back and visit at our September policy meeting or October policy meeting to come back and see if there's been any guidance provided over the summer, because I'm anticipating something may change over the summer when we're gone, but at least it gives us an opportunity then to come back and revisit those policies at that time.
Okay. And I also want to just point out that in the policy, the 6114.81, where it talks about temporary powers granted to superintendent of schools, in bullet number 6, the policy gives the authority to limit access to public school grounds and district buildings during school closures. So I just want to point that out, that that's also there. But I
Okay.
guess it,
This one right
during
here.
school closures isn't really applicable, but
Right.
does talk about building access.
Right. And so some of our vendors that might want to access our buildings, this year it was closed. Certainly if, we all agreed, we can certainly relax some of those restrictions next year on a case-by-case basis. And this just gives the superintendent the authority to limit access, but also, based on the way this reads to me anyway, also gives the superintendent the authority to allow people with access to the building. As we all know, that access was restricted this year.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, Rachel, I just want to make sure I understand. You were just pointing it out.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that it's also there.
Okay.
So do we want to change the language of that last sentence for this visits to schools policy?
This one?
Yes. So these temporary restrictions shall remain in effect through to the beginning of 2021 to 22 school year, or until repealed by the school board.
We're not going to revisit it in September and make the decision then?
You want to, okay, so we don't have to change the language then, or?
I think the way it's written, in fact, I believe the committee recommended this line and made sure this line was in all of these temporary policies. For some reason, I feel like, I don't know if it was Joe DeSilva, but I just feel like we spent some time on this line, how important this line was, just in case it needed to be extended.
Mm-hmm. Are we covered for the summer?
Well, it says the 2021 school year.
Mm-hmm. or until repealed. So we're
Until
under the,
repealed by the school
yeah.
board. Yeah.
So between these two, I would say we're covered.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So for the
Um,
purpose of the minutes, it's going to be the revisiting of this policy in September policy meeting.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okie dokie.
Okay,
One down.
one down.
Right, right. And this one, 6614.82. And this one is essentially asking students and staff if you are feeling ill, right? This is about the symptoms check, to continue to monitor yourself and do these self-monitor at home. If you're not feeling well, that is important that, you notify either your supervisor or you reach out to your school. And we're asking you to not be present in school. Kathy has requested that we maintain this policy because um, until further notice, the state health department is asking that we still maintain and be mindful of all of these recommendations in our policies previously. So symptoms of illness, the physical distancing, we could either move this to 3 feet, or we can say we'll attempt to maintain at least 6 feet apart, if we'd like, but certainly at the minimum 3 feet. So as we all know on this call, this is still applicable as of right now. Physical distancing is continued here. And then it also speaks to mask as for PPE, that is required for staff. And, as of right now, that is still the case for us. The cleaning and disinfecting, certainly Wednesdays will not be a day out of school buildings anymore. But there is an expectation that our custodial staff will be continuing to disinfect those commonly used spaces in our buildings. Whether those is handrails and all of those things, if those things will continue to happen. So we would like to maintain all of these things in a policy for right now. And then,
Kevin, I did have a thought to change the physical distancing piece
Okay.
of it.
and I know we did
Um,
talk about that the other day.
And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to give it a label, but I think it should say that we will maintain the CDC recommended distance.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I like that, the CDC.
yeah, CDC.
I mean, who knew back then when we adopted this that it would change,
A million times.
a million times, yeah.
And is this something we would like to share this update with the board? And certainly
And put
doesn't
it up.
require approval, but just share the update.
Yeah, yeah. Especially for the community too.
Okay.
So,
And this covers us in case this changes again. That's a good
Mhm.
call.
So you don't think this needs an approval of the full board?
I don't think so, because it's a
No.
CDC recommendation.
Mhm.
I mean, we
Okay.
didn't make it up. They did.
Right, right.
It supersedes our authority.
Mhm.
Certainly for information, we can provide the update for information. if you
Okay,
like.
great. Yes. And then I didn't see anything else that really was, I mean, everything else is pretty standard,
Okay.
I think.
On that second page here, Kevin, at the top. Nope, the second one there, yeah. It says, right under introduction, providing recess shall ensure that, and I don't know if that's just a typo or text that got inserted or if it was supposed to read that way.
I'm sorry, Kate, I
In-
don't see where you are.
it-
Are you here?
In the bold text right above it,
Uh-huh.
uh, it's instruction and then provising recess.
Oh,
I think it's just some extra text, or maybe it got pulled out of somewhere else, but
thank you.
thanks.
That was strange. Thank you.
No problem.
I have to check and make sure that's not in the official copy that's on the website. I don't believe so, though. Thank you. I may have
Thank you.
copied and paste and put that in the wrong place by mistake. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rachel, did you say there was something else in this policy or?
No,
Okay.
nothing from me unless there is anything that you caught, Kate or Kathy. No, okay. Okay, so we'll put this up for information at our next board meeting. Great.
What I'll do is I'll share this with Kara P after the meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And would you like to share any of these others for information, or do you feel it's not necessary?
They haven't changed, have they?
No.
No,
Okay.
I think so.
All right.
No.
All right. And then emergencies and disaster preparedness. Did we need to talk this one through?
Yes, because this one also expires at the end of the year. And yeah. And also I just, the temporary powers granted to superintendents of school, I wanted to have a conversation just around that provision. It's not something that we are required to have. I think the state authorizes the superintendent anyway, with or without this policy. But the discussion in the community was kind of weird around this, and I heard from folks that their perception to this policy was that we took ourselves out of the decision-making process. And we gave it to the superintendent with this policy. And my feeling was it did the total opposite, because the superintendent was authorized with or without this policy as granted by the state. But the other provision in this policy was that the decisions be in consultation with the board. So in a way, we inserted ourselves in the decision-making process with this policy. But I just want you to be aware, like, those were the things that I heard from folks. And also with onboarding a new superintendent, do we want to, I don't know, extend this with that in mind, that we're going to be transitioning to a new CEO of schools?
It's a good question, but I think, at the end of the day, that person's still going to be responsible for the safety and the welfare of the district. So I don't think you can handicap whoever comes in by, just because there's not an existing sense of trust or relationship. That's just kind of my gut reaction. I had a quick question, Rachel.
Sure.
As far as the feedback that you were getting from folks in the community, did that seem to be a response more to like the executive authority around the physical spaces of the school, or around the financial components, or something else?
Yeah, I think it was just the opening of school. the opening and closing, deciding, in the fall that we weren't going to, open.
Whether it was going to be full or not, yeah. in
Right,
person
and then
or not.
again in October, and,
Yeah.
those decisions, whether to go hybrid, the transition from learning model.
I mean, I think what you said makes a lot of sense that, normally we wouldn't have much authority with that anyway, and that this at least gives us some kind of, dialogue, not requirement, but strong suggestion. So,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Is there anything in particular any lines you want me to highlight for this discussion in the policy?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
It's emergencies and pandemics. I mean, we have to give him that kind of latitude, and he has it anyway, so.
right.
And we can always say, as the governing board, we still have the right to go, oh, no.
Right.
Doing it that way.
Right, and he has the option to include us as much as he wants to, as well as with, Dr. Sal and his latest, decision to reopen in the fall. He's asked us to vote
Yes.
on that decision. So, I mean,
And
I'm okay, in keeping with this.
I think he followed our health department when he closed school, and even when we didn't open full in the fall, he still followed their guidance. He didn't. I don't think anybody would do it without researching it.
Yeah, without a team,
Right.
It was a team decision. It didn't happen in his own bubble.
That's right.
But I just wanted to make this group aware that that's the perception out there, that, no other boards, I guess, in our area had something like this. But when I had attended a webinar with Cabe and Vincent Mustaro, and when this first hit, and there were 100 policies impacted by COVID and the closures, he said, these are the 4 that your board, at minimum should consider. And this is in line with what the state authorizes. So, just to make you aware, and so we can extend this, I guess.
So just no revisions at this time.
No revisions, but then this,
Would be another one that we would revisit in September.
you want to revisit it in September with the other? Yeah,
Well, this sunsets in January,
Right.
December, yeah.
yeah, we can do that. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay,
Does to me, yes.
great.
Yeah, I agree, totally agree. And in this policy, just in terms of the superintendent's powers that are granted by this policy, many of them are directly related to pandemic-like decisions, and obviously they're all connected. And so, in many cases, the authority that the superintendent is given in this policy may not necessarily be applicable if we're loosening the reins on the pandemic itself, right? So I don't even know if the superintendent can say, well, I've been granted the authority because of the COVID-19. It just might not be applicable, many of these policies. So I think it definitely warrants discussion in the fall, just to kind of clarify if it's even necessary. And in many cases, quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be necessary after we open schools.
Knock on wood.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay, great.
So
Thank
Kim
you.
is coming in momentarily.
I see her.
I apologize for my sweatshirt. I wasn't I wasn't planning on spending the evening with you guys. I did take it out of the ponytail though. It's kind of coming
Aw.
down again, right?
We're casual here. It's a friendly policy meeting.
Anyway, tell me how I can help you.
So Rachel, would you like to speak to public participation first, or taping or recording?
let's just, I think let's get through the public participation part first. I think, I don't know.
You make it sound like that's the easier one.
I think so. I think so.
I was the one that asked Rachel to put it on for a discussion, only because I'm just so taken aback sometimes by what people think they can say. And I'm not talking about our own people. I'm talking about the letters that come in, and especially from Lead, I think it was Lead, they're getting very emboldened every single time. And I actually felt threatened at this last letter that came through. Like, you had better hire who we want to hire, or else. At least that's how I took it. And I don't know. I'm just taken aback by people's boldness.
That's a very fair point, honestly, because I think, and this is kind of a bit of a bird walk, but this age of emails and social media, and people are emboldened in ways that we never were when we were kind of coming up the ranks.
You're right.
So, and I think also that a lot of times what happens is people don't appreciate that their words can be interpreted differently as written words. I think people don't see or hear context or, aggression or anything like that. And some of, because I agree with you, I read some things and I'm so taken aback. So I don't think you're alone on that. I think, this is one policy that I did look at carefully. I didn't look so much at the taping one, but I will when we get to it. But this one, only because this one's tricky because of the speech issue, right? So you have a choice of, you're going to allow public participation or you're not going to allow public participation. And that's really your choice to make. If you allow public participation, you certainly can govern what you're getting at, which is the personal attacks, the derogatory nature, the threatening, the insightfulness. You can govern that. You have to be kind of quick-witted about it because you have to do it as someone speaking if it's not written, right? So you really do have to kind of be quick-witted about it. But you certainly can govern the kind of speech. But my concern about this policy is I don't think you can govern the content of that speech. So what gave me pause was this, that it's in the opinion of the chairperson what comment is appropriate or inappropriate. And that's where I think you can, we talk sometimes when we look at statutory interpretation, lawyers talk a lot about, is it so overly broad or so vague that people can really have a legitimate dispute about it? And I think what made me nervous about that phrase was exactly that point, because if you're going to allow speech, and put aside for a minute the tone and the tenor and the personal attack piece, put that aside for a second. If you're going to allow speech, I think you have to be really careful about, are you going to allow speech about, for example, I think that Columbus Day should now be called Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, there may be a lot of people that don't think that's an appropriate topic for a public discussion. Are you going to allow someone to come and say, I believe that we should have a student group that should be only white kids and we shouldn't let anybody else in it? Well, you're going to say, I don't think that's really appropriate conversation. And I don't think you want to put yourselves or your board chair in the position of censoring one kind of speech or the other, because you're going to open yourself up to a claim that someone's been suppressed, right? So that was the only thing. I think what might help, and what I suggested to Kevin in my email was, what might help as you think about it is, what exactly are you trying to get at by this policy? Are you trying to get at stopping the kind of speech that you described, Kathy, that is threatening, or are you trying to get at going toward the content and restricting in some way the kinds of things people can talk about? And that's what I think you have to come around.
I think what we want is in public participation is to include the public and let them have a voice, but only in our agenda. I don't think that we should allow them to just say any damn thing they want off the agenda. If we are talking about opening school, then their voices should be heard about opening school. I don't think we should go off on the search for a new superintendent, not on the agenda.
So is the question about germaneness of the comment? Is that the question?
I think.
There's that note at the bottom specifies that the board can limit comments to a particular topic or to only agenda items on the agenda.
Mhm.
So we do have that option.
Mhm. You know, I think that there's kind of the lawyer answer and there's the practical answer. So, right?
They're not the same? Come on.
They're never the same.
In my world, yes.
I think the practical answer on this is how in the world, you know, are you going to say to Mrs. Jones who sits up to make a public comment, oh, I'm very sorry, but we didn't have your item on this agenda. So you either have to leave or you have to not speak or you have to go sit down again, or yes, you can speak because your comments are tailored. I think you're going to have trouble kind of doing that.
All the time.
One of the solutions, I suppose, and I don't know how many boards do this, but you know, sometimes people put public participation in different places on their agenda. Sometimes they put it at the end of their agenda. So, you know, you go through your whole meeting and anyone who deigns to sit through the whole thing can comment about what you've spoken about over the last 2 hours. I mean, I suppose that's another way to do it.
The city
Is-
council,
Yeah.
sorry, city
Kate.
council asks you to specify which agenda item you're speaking
Yep.
about.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
we
city
do
council is
publish ours.
absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, Kate.
Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. Yes, it's absolutely restricted to the agenda for
Mhm.
sure.
I don't know. Maybe I should stop being a buttercup about it. That's all.
Well, you know, I don't, it's a hard, like I said, it's kind of a hard call. There's kind of the legal
No,
question.
I wanted to
Question.
answer them right away and say, you know,
Well,
what do you think we're going to do? We're going to pick the best person for the job. We're not going to, I don't care if it's purple with yellow polka dots.
unicorn, we say.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you.
Could
Yeah.
I just, we move into a different direction if we follow the city and just limit, or not limit, that's not the word. You know, we know what the agenda items are going to be for that night and they can only speak on those agenda items.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, you could try going in that direction, and if you find that it's a disaster, you can always come back and amend the policy again. You know, I don't know that you and I would want to think it through a little bit more with you too, Joe. About I don't know if you might. These instructions typically sit on your agenda, right? So I don't know if you couldn't maybe try going to that kind of a format for a while without actually tailoring the policy to it right now, and kind of have the policy catch up later. I just would hate to see you get into kind of a, pardon the vernacular, kind of a pissing match with people who are or are not topic, because then your meeting's going to go south from the beginning, you know?
And Kate,
Does
this is the
it-
line that you read to the public before every board meeting, at every
Mhm.
board meeting,
Mhm.
word for word.
No, that is not
This
not
is
as
not it.
exactly. Well, did we change it? I don't think that's what I read last meeting.
It's close.
It's close, but it's not the exact same.
Yeah,
Is this, and I apologize for coming in late. I was picking my daughter up at dance class, but is it me or is this somewhat of a different inquiry if we're meeting live versus accepting written submissions?
Well, Joe, you know that people are not going to say the same things to your face that they can say in a letter.
Of course,
True.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
And the germaneness of the written submissions we've had seems to be a little more scattered than I think the germaneness of the public comment at the handful of remember, I only had a handful of live meetings before we went fully remote,
Yeah.
but it just seemed like the comments at the live meetings were a little bit closer. They hewed closer to the agenda than seemingly the written submissions have.
Mhm. Well,
And
if you
it's
think
it's
about,
so true. You know, when we had, when we were going to eliminate freshman sports, for instance, you remember how full it was and how each of them got up.
Mhm.
And this is when we were having live meetings, Joe.
Mhm.
But they were all polite and they were
Mhm.
all telling us why they felt the way they felt. I didn't have this, we didn't have this in letter writing that I feel threatened sometimes.
Mhm.
But
And if you
I
think
read.
if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because think about it this way. So you're sitting at home, you're a parent, and you find out that next week the board's going to talk about eliminating freshman sports.
Mhm.
You're going to make a point to go to that meeting because it's important to you. You know it's coming up on the agenda. You're going to show up. You're going to walk in and you're going to write your name on the list. Maybe spur of the moment, maybe prepared, right? when we do these virtually, I don't think that same kind of thing buzzes around. Maybe it does, I don't know, but I'm not sure the same kind of thing buzzes around. And so I think you might have your finger on something there that
Right.
people don't necessarily bear in mind what the meeting's about when they send in an email to speak. You could read it this week, you could read it 2 weeks from now when you get on the topic of what is in the letter,
Can I just clarify that we are not recommending that we're cutting freshman sports? I'm just saying.
Yeah, for bright yellow. They were
I
bright
heard
yellow
that said
shirts.
2 or 3 times. I was like,
Oh
no,
my gosh.
please.
Your
We have
phone is
enough
blowing
going
up
on.
with text messages.
Use a
that
different hypothetical, I
Right.
beg of you.
Right. They had bright yellow t-shirts, like bright fluorescent. And I remember them walking in and just thinking, oh no.
And there was standing room only.
Good for us.
Hey.
It was what we would now call
That's
a super
awesome,
spreader
actually.
event.
Think about this. The city council not only restricts public comment to the agenda, it restricts it to the first half hour of the meeting, and that's it. And
Yeah.
they ain't kidding.
Yeah.
At the end of that
Yeah.
30 minutes, you're done. Public is done.
Yeah.
End of conversation.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
We discussed that at some prior policy meetings, to limit it to 30 minutes. Not that we've had very many meetings that, that goes on and on forever, but if I could just give my thought on this is, so many times, I don't feel that public participation ever has been on, not ever, but generally is not on an agenda item. I think of all the many things that we're not aware of, and then that's how we find out about some things. Otherwise we wouldn't hear about it. And I hate to limit public voice, and this is nothing to do with, what we're hearing about. I just, I for a year sat at the meetings and talked about sibling preference at AIS. And that wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah.
We're not the only one.
Yeah.
But that also was on our agenda.
Yeah. Well, I guess, what are your goals? Are your goals to make the public participation more incisive and shorter and clearer? Are your goals to be able to be more nimble in stepping in and stopping when it goes off track? I mean, what are your goals for this particular policy that what you have now does not achieve, I guess is my question.
I'm with Rachel that I don't want to limit people from being able or feeling comfortable enough to come before us and give us their opinion.
Mhm.
I just want them to be civil.
Mhm.
And that's an easy one to address, really.
all.
Yeah.
Just be civil, because you know what? We don't get paid for this. We are there. I mean, we're here again tonight.
Yeah.
And, we're trying our best. And that's why I don't mind hearing from the public. But for me to sit there and be flogged in public
Mhm.
is not my cup of tea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Well, we do have sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, and I agree with both Rachel and Kathy. I think we do need to hear from people. And yes, if we limit it to the agenda, then we do run the risk of not hearing about things. That said, we've in not that long ago, we burned a half hour, 40 minutes of a meeting with things with entreaties to deal with an issue that's not before us. It was did people basically communicating to us about a state issue and a state senator's vote on something. Now, while I respect the opinions, that has nothing to do with us.
Mhm.
Nothing, zero, zilch, nada, nothing. It's not on our agenda. It can't be on our agenda. It's a state statute.
Mhm.
While it's an important issue, clearly, it has nothing to do with us. I mean, maybe it's not germaneness to the agenda. Maybe it's germaneness to the board.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was so wildly outside of our legal remit. interesting, but I don't want to say a waste of our time because nothing's a waste of our time.
Mhm.
But it wasn't a good use of efficient use of our meeting time that evening because it had nothing to do with us and there wasn't anything we could deal with or do anything about.
So that's one, that's an interesting point because that's when where my head is going on that is what happens if you get the first person who does that and then you have some sort of an intervention along the lines of, just to clarify, while we appreciate your comment, this is not something that is within the province of this particular board. That may dissuade, or you may say others on this topic, it's not something that we can do anything about, and we're going to move on to people who have more germane topics. You could be more activist in the way you manage that, without, I think, running afoul of suppressing speech. So
easier to do at a live meeting than when we're reading emails.
For sure.
No
But
doubt.
it's also we could review, or the chairperson could review the emails before they're read aloud at the meeting. I mean,
Here's a question.
Sure.
Insofar as we're talking about emails that are received before the meeting, every now and then we receive one during the meeting, but usually we have these well in advance. They could frankly be circulated to all of us in advance of the meeting, made a part of the minutes, so we don't need to read them at all.
And there are some districts that do that.
I mean, there's no reason to read them if we all have them and we make them part of the minutes. This way the public sees them, the public is aware of them. In fact, frankly, the public gets a better view of them than trying to read what our poor secretary has to try to type based on someone's reading of it aloud into the record.
I think it's the Board of Finance here in Reading. They post them in a document, and it's tagged to the town website, and you can go in and you can scroll through all of them and see them as a member of the public. And then when they come in to the meeting, those comments are already posted. The board can choose to, say anything about them or not. And then they will take comments from the floor in that meeting, because that's the other question is, if I write you an email on Sunday, why should that comment be read during your meeting on Wednesday night? I'm not physically present there, right? If it was a board meeting and I wasn't present, you wouldn't hear me because I would have sent it on Sunday night. So it's the internet nature of this is making it kind of hard, I think, to grapple with. But maybe that's the solution, is that anything that's coming during the week goes up on the website as comments from people with their names and what the comments are, and then someone could provide a summary, or someone could simply say, are there any others from right now coming in during the meeting? I've seen some in chat rooms. I think our days are numbered on doing the remote meetings, honestly. So I think it may be kind of a lot of conversation about
moot point.
But yeah, I mean, right now we have to get 3,000 Chromebooks out of the boardroom before you can have a meeting there. But once we do that, then we should be okay.
Everybody take a Chromebook and start like working on them while we're having the meeting.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for bringing this forward.
Of course.
Yes, I wanted to have a conversation about it and just, I don't know, just have a conversation.
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, and maybe Gladys, if you're comfortable, maybe a statement from the chair at the beginning of our next meeting, just a reminder, this is our policy around public participation, and we appreciate your respect and civility.
Knock it off.
I would do that.
And maybe even a little something like, we're an educational institution. We are teaching kids how to raise their voices in an appropriate way. We should be modeling good behavior for children, right? And that's your mission. So yeah.
Kathy Molinaro for Sergeant at Arms.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would just like to say something, and I know a lot of people have a lot of guts out there that's a little bit stronger than mine. And I've been in this situation a long time, and I've gotten hurt and burnt many times. But it's not easy when someone come up, you don't know what they are reading or what they're going to say. And I know that I'm a softy sometimes. When people start talking and you want to stop them, it's sort of hard to stop. Okay.
Very
And I
hard.
can remember going back about 10 or 12 years ago. And I don't know, I was chairperson at the particular time. And this parent came in from Shelter Rock School. And the meeting had started at 7. The boardroom was packed. I can't remember what it was about. And this lady showed up. She really had to make this statement about her child from Shelter Rock School. And she came in at 7:45. Well, we were going on with our agenda. And she stood up in the back and she shook the paper at me and she says, I want to speak. And I said, so I'm sorry. We have a heavy agenda tonight. And our meeting goes from 7 to 7:30. Well, I didn't get here on time and I want to make a statement. And I didn't let her. And you know what she did? She went back the next day at Shelter Rock School. She didn't call my name. She went back and told all the parents that lady that was the Black Board of Education chairperson wouldn't let me speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and you try to be as courteous as you possibly can to people. And sometimes, you know, I'm like Kathy. I would have liked to took something and really just punched her, but, you know, I moved on.
Yeah.
So, and I think, you know, you don't know who you're going to deal with and how people are going to come back and do things to you. And it's really not easy to try to stop a person when they're determined to say what they have to say.
You know,
And
one of
to
the
be
things.
honest, for the most part, we listen to all of it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really do. But when it gets out of hand, it seems to escalate.
Yeah. You're right.
Continues to escalate. And if you don't stop it, that public flogging will go on.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've seen happen at meetings over the years is, you know, those situations where someone comes to speak and just doesn't feel like they were heard. They may say what they have to say. And I have seen a couple of times Dr. Sal get up from his seat and walk out to the kind of audience after and kind of exchange, like, here's my number. Can I take your number? I think that, you know, even as you go through this process of searching for someone new, it's kind of an interesting hypothetical for somebody, right? You're in a meeting and someone who's really, you've got a parent who's really worked up. And I think what you're trying to do on the spot is you're trying to find a way to give them to be an opportunity to be heard in a way that's appropriate, that's not going to condemn someone, that's not going to take too much time, that's not going to be offensive. And, you know, it strikes me that maybe, you know, we can policy this to death, but maybe some of it is really just having this notion of being a little bit more activist as you listen to people speak and kind of, you know, keeping them to 3 minutes or whatever it is,
Okay.
trying to, you know, really kind of rein in, maybe trying to steer subsequent comments. If, like Joe, your example of a topic that's something that's really off topic, maybe that's really, you know, what you can hope for. The price for speech is high, you know, the price for free speech is high. But sometimes you can find other ways to assuage some people who have real concerns, you know, or concerns that are very important to them.
So can we put this policy in our next agenda just for information, just to
Okay.
post it out there and so that the community can see it?
I will add this one. Please share his information. Absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone have any, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off on if they have anything else they want to say about public participation, or can we move on?
So, Rachel, I did have a question.
Oh, sure.
And Kim, I had raised it quickly in one of our email exchanges. Just wondering what the board's obligation is or would be in the event there's a statement made that the board does deem inflammatory. And so, you know, we have our meetings live, but we also edit. Obviously, we've edited before because we've had some unforeseen situations take place. And so what is our obligation to share in YouTube with the public after the meeting is done, particularly if something happens that's, you know, the board deems inappropriate, memorialize?
are we obligated to record that, to keep those recordings?
We're not obligated to broadcast the meeting at all as a legal matter,
Mm-mm.
right?
Mhm.
I'm not
Under
aware
the
of any
exec- well,
legal
under-
obligation.
Under the executive order, right, which is how we're doing this, because,
Right.
right, you may have an
Yeah.
obligation to make it in real time available. I don't know
Right.
that you're required, and I'm.
But once we go
kind of-
live,
Once we go live, sure. I mean, we only ever have written notes, and that's a
Right.
really easy way to sanitize something that you're not happy about, right?
That's a good word, Kim.
Mhm.
well, I'd be careful. I mean, it's exactly what we're talking about. But I mean, we have a secretary that takes minutes, and
Right.
we record the meeting for purposes of doing the minutes. We're not actually obligated to broadcast the meeting when we're live. I mean, not right now. This
Right.
is executive order land.
Right.
But we're not obligated to broadcast it at all. So I would assume we could edit, if we choose to leave a YouTube video up of a meeting, I suppose we could edit it however we want to, although obviously I would probably counsel against too cute an editing job. But I mean, I think if something happens in the middle of the meeting that's really untoward, for example,
Like when we
we
did
get
Zoom
bombed.
bombs.
We got bombed last summer.
Right.
We don't need to leave that video up.
I will never forget that. I just remember Dr. Sal going, "What even is this?" And I thought, "Oh,
Oh my gosh.
I was logging in from the baseball field at my son's baseball practice.
oh, it's
Oh
awful.
man.
And I'm like, holy,
Oh, it's
uh-oh,
awful."
what? It's the worst.
I have to say, in this world of technology, I'm really torn about this because somebody asked me, somebody at central office, one of the IT guys said to me today, do you think that your meetings are shorter because they're virtual, or what do you think? And I said, I don't think they're any shorter, but I will tell you two things. One, just selfishly, I like doing it from home because I don't have to drive home when it's over. I've been at work all day. But I will tell you, as a parent and a townsperson in my own town, I go to many more meetings when I can sit in my living room and turn it on, and I can cook dinner and have it in the background. And I think you're getting many more people engaged in your meetings because of it. And I think that's been a silver lining of doing this. And you could, I would urge, like you, Joe, to have a practice of either keep them all posted or record all of them in writing, have somebody watch them and take notes and do it. But I wouldn't piecemeal, and I'd be really careful about the cute editing, because I think you could get killed on that.
Oh yeah. I definitely agree. We should leave them up. I going to my son's first baseball practice. I'm wearing a mask and talking to somebody else, and one of the dads is like, "Wait a minute, you Joe?" I'm like, "Yeah, he recognized my voice from Board of Ed meetings," proving some people actually watch this stuff.
And I think it's great. I mean, I've
was great.
a lot of meetings I wouldn't otherwise, because it's just easier. So.
I still can't wait for them to be live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know.
I'm
You might
so
want to
tired.
think, not to joke about the 3,000 Chromebooks, but that's a real thing. But you might want to think about, I don't know how the black box worked. You did a meeting in the black box, didn't you? I think that's a really great place, because you've got sound. You can space yourselves out. You don't have to worry about sitting on top of each other like you do, there. You can put people kind of up in the bleachers. So I don't know.
Hard part is us. Us is easy. We can space
Yeah.
ourselves out.
Yeah.
The hard part is, how do we let the public in a way that's
Yeah.
safe for them as vis-a-vis each other and us?
Yeah.
It would have to be limited audience, and then also live stream, a combination.
Yeah. We could hand out those big giggle bubbles to people on the way in. Here you go. Walk in like,
Pick up your dust shield.
Find a restaurant that's got one of those igloos, and we can all have our own igloo.
I know. But I think I didn't look specifically at that taping recording proposal, but I think, it sounds like we're kind of all on the same page. I just think if you're going to do them and post them. If you're not going to post them, don't post them, and summarize, within a week or 3 days or whatever it is, after the meeting, and take them down. But be real careful about doing some retained forever, others not retained forever, and then selective editing. I think that's.
We were just worried about any FOIA violations and taking them down.
Again, I think we're in a weird space because of this executive order. You know, and I agree. I think we want to think about it really for when you come back to live. But I do think if there is, and I would want to research this question a little bit more, but I should think if your secretary creates the minutes in writing from watching the tape, that the minutes in writing should be sufficient to meet your obligation under FOIA. But again, I'd want to look at that a little bit closer, and I'm not sure how this notion of suspending those rules under the executive order would affect that opinion.
And as a practical matter, once it goes up on the internet, it's there forever somewhere. We can take it down. That doesn't mean it's not somewhere.
You've been listening to my conversations with my 19-year-old, haven't you?
Mine aren't old enough to have that conversation with yet, but they will be soon.
Yeah. Yep.
So there were two versions for consideration. Rachel, I don't know if I don't recall from our last meeting if we even entertained both of them as consideration. I don't remember where we left off in our last meeting.
We got stuck at the beginning, just at the recording shall be retained for 1 year.
That was
my preference is to keep it the simpler first version. I think it's, it's bare bones, and I don't think it needs to be anything more than that. So my personal preference is the first version, as long as it doesn't violate any FOIA rules.
I think those 3 points are sufficiently broad. It doesn't say where you're going to retain them. It doesn't say you're going to keep them posted, or it doesn't say anything like that. I think you can maneuver in terms of pandemic and non-pandemic under the breadth of those 3 categories.
Query, is the second half of this recording devices component of this, are we talking about allowing the general public to willy-nilly record our meetings, and is that wise? And do we have to do that?
I think that's right. And I think, isn't that part of the covert recording? You can't record somebody without their consent, and I think that's probably what that's getting at.
It looks to me like we're allowing the public to record them. We're recording the meeting clearly, but the way this is going, it sounds like we're allowing the public to record our meetings. Do we need to do that, and should we do that?
And by the way,
think
Joe,
we can
it's in
restrict
both options.
No, I think we can. I can't record. I can't record anything in a courthouse. For sure. Now that's the judicial branch has set that policy, and quite firmly, by the way. But yes, Kim knows.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with our ability to do that. I'm not sure we should. That's a question.
Right.
I'm kind of 2 minds on it.
And I suspect, honestly, that from the time that sample was written to now, the technology is so different anyway. Somebody was talking, the tech guy in our office was talking today with me about how there's a pen device now that you can kind of click on the pen device, which starts the camera that you're wearing on your hip. And this is changing as quickly as the policies are changing. So, yeah.
Just think about what Google Glass allowed before they discontinued it, for sure.
Yeah.
We could omit it altogether and not say yes or no. I don't want to, we take a lot of pictures, I guess, when we have recognitions and things like that. It's
Parents will sometimes record their kid getting an award or something like that.
That's true. That's true. I'm more concerned with the person who sets up a tripod in the back of the room and chooses to, video it and then selectively edit it and whatnot later. Which they can't do with our YouTube feed because it's copywritten. Because if they do it with our YouTube feed, they get sued for copyright infringement. That's just a thought.
The only other thing I'm thinking you could try to do, and you may or may not want to, you could try to modify the language a little bit to get at, if somebody wants to do selective recording, like the photographs you're talking about, as a supplement to the board's process of recording these meetings and posting them on YouTube, You might tailor the policy that way, that it's intended to provide people a supplemental way to record pieces of a meeting, like a photograph of your kid getting an award, but recognizes that the primary means of holding people accountable for the content of the meeting is going to rest in the district's recording of it in the back of the room by Sterling Miller, you know? That's another way. I think you might be trying to split a hair down the middle, but because I think that's what I hear you're trying to get at, is not restricting that piece.
Yeah, I'm obviously not trying to restrict a parent videotaping their kid get an award or somebody videotaping a recognition. Again, I'm more concerned with the person who decides to set up in the back of the room so they have their own video file of the meeting to then, you know, which it cut and slice and dice in a way that may not be fair to a member, fair to the chair, fair to the district.
Right. What does it say if you scroll down a little bit there, Kevin? That second one?
Anything else the stuff that's going to sit in the box after you don't. So now we use our resources that we have around here and we be creative. Okay? Sound good?
Yeah, I don't like number 3. I guess that's saying what we could do.
Right. But maybe we need to be more, maybe we need to clarify that that's us doing that recording.
I understand what you're saying though, Rachel. It starts to get very complex when you use more words.
Yeah. So my thought is to just, you know, omit the second part entirely.
Hey, Kim, scroll back up for a second. Hey, Kim, query. Can we scroll back up so we get 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the picture?
This one, Joe?
Yeah, these 4 that.
Oh yeah.
Hang on, I'm lagged, so there we go. Number 1 says that, no, go back down. I'm sorry. There you go. The board chairperson shall permit the use of photographic broadcasting recording devices only after informing those present devices will be used. Read number 4. Read the second sentence. The fact that such meetings are being recorded by the board need not be announced by the board chairman in advance. They're internally inconsistent.
Yeah, I think what you put your finger on it a minute ago. Number 1 is meant for the public that's sitting in the audience. Number 4 is meant for you all as the district. What are you doing to record the meeting, right? And they've been merged into this one policy, and the fact that they did that is what makes it confusing. Which to Rachel,
the other version
gets really hard.
The other version's better because this would appear. I think you're right. I think that was the intent of both of those.
You're right.
Yet in this formulation, they're internally inconsistent. Rachel's right. Go with the first version.
Yeah, because everything that's detailed there, 1 to 4, fits within the breadth of the top policy. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are we saying?
So I think what we're saying
we're
is
okay with this.
We're okay with the first
3.
Just the first 3 and not get into the recording devices. Let's strike the second. Yeah. So just this.
Just want to keep this. We don't want any guidance around if someone.
That's the photographing.
I think we need to keep it in there in case somebody does come in to record. There's nothing restricting them from doing so. Yeah.
You got to keep something there. Yeah.
You need to give them some guidance as far as what they can and can't do while they're in there with the camera. So
how about in paragraph 1, broadcasting, recording of meetings shall be permitted at the discretion of the chair or the discretion of the board. I don't care how we phrase it. I'm just trying to think of something where, we can at least have some control over the wild, wild west. Or am I being overly concerned about something that's probably not an issue?
I didn't hear you. I froze. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm wondering if maybe we do something in like broadcasting recordings of meetings shall be permitted at the discretion of the chair or discretion of the board. I mean, I may be being overcautious on this, and maybe this isn't as big an issue as I think it might be.
I like that. I like that, Joe. Right in the number 1 under broadcasting and recordings of meetings are permitted. At the
Upon the discretion.
discretion of the chair,
There you go.
the chairperson. I like that.
I do too.
Cool.
Great. So
Okay.
then, if there are no other comments there, can I have a motion to bring this to the full board for a first reading?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We're going to have a busy Board of Ed meeting on May 12th.
I feel a
That
cold
sounded
coming-
tongue in
I feel
cheek.
I feel a cold coming on.
Kim all of a sudden came down with a 10-day flu. Kim mysteriously says it's a case of the 9-day flu.
Well, thank you for being here, Kim. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate,
Like I said, pardon the hoodie.
not
but
at all, no,
It's my other life. All
totally.
right. All right.
I'm only dressed like a lawyer because I just got home.
I know. I remember that. All right. It's nice to see you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Kim. See you tomorrow.
a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.